An all-new Miata doesn't come around very often. In fact, in the 26-year existence of this model, Mazda has only reinvented the car a total of 3 times. Today, let's take a look at the all-new 4th generation, formerly known as the ND, and see if it carries on that Miata tradition of being a toy-like roadster. Now, reviewing cars for a living is probably the dream job of over 50% of you watching this video, so a lot of people will ask me the question, what kind of car do you drive? And I'm happy to report that this 2016 Miata is actually my personal car. I decided to trade in, or not really trade in, but sell my 2013 Acura ILX that you guys have seen on the channel and replace it with the all-new ND 2016 Miata. Now, as a driving enthusiast, I've always had a soft spot for the Miata. I showed you guys the previous NC Miata last year. It was an automatic GT hardtop, and when Mazda first showed us the all-new 2016 model last September, I was instantly in love. I fell in love with the design of the car. It's got this angrier, much more sleek look versus the somewhat bubbly look of the previous NC generation. And the Miata has a long history for Mazda. In fact, it is the best-selling roadster in the world, with Mazda selling almost 1 million units in the 26-year existence. So this is a pretty important vehicle for Mazda in terms of brand reputation. And the all-new ND Miata certainly carries over that Miata tradition. This vehicle underwent a significant weight loss, and it actually shrank. In contrast to what most designers do when they redesign a model, Mazda actually made this new one smaller and lighter. It's up to 250 pounds lighter versus the previous model, depending on if you compare it to the hardtop model with an automatic versus the soft top models. Now, the all-new ND Miata is also about 3 inches shorter overall. It's about 154 inches long, so it makes it relatively shorter, about 6 inches shorter than most of these subcompact cars that you see on the road today. So this is a pretty small car by today's standards. And at about 2,300 pounds, it's one of the lightest new cars you can buy on the road today. Only really the new Alfa Romeo 4C comes close to this weight in terms of a sports car. If you guys are going to go look at vehicles like a Chevrolet Spark, they may be around the same weight. Mazda's 2, which no longer is in production, weighs about the same to a little bit less than this all-new 2016 Miata. Now, looking at the front of this car, this is probably the design that is certainly the most attractive of the new Miata. It's very angry, it's very sleek. These standard LED headlights are standard on every model, including the base sport model. Now, speaking of the trim levels, you can choose this car between sport, mid-level club, and then GT, the Grand Touring. My particular tester is the Grand Touring model. I decided to go with the Grand Touring model because it gives you a couple of extra things. The interior, you'll get mostly the upgrades on the inside, where you'll have automatic climate control, leather heated seats, navigation system, and then of course there are some driver assistance tech that are included in the GT model, such as blind spot monitoring with rear cross traffic alert, lane departure warning, and rain sensing wipers. Now, the front end of the car sports basically Mazda's Kodo design language, and it is the most successful, I think, on the new Miata versus all the other Mazdas. I mean, every new Mazda that I've tested and shown you guys has impressed me. Mazda is doing a really good job with the design, the driving dynamics, and their interiors of their all-new vehicles. Now, looking around the side profile of the Miata, you can see it's a very low roadster. This vehicle is about an inch to about a half an inch wider and about an inch lower, or half an inch lower versus the previous model. So it gives the Miata a very aggressive stance, and these flared out fenders, the wheel arches, they make the car look a little bit more masculine, as you can say. I mean, you guys have known the Miata has had a reputation for being kind of like a girly car, and I have to say this new one is certainly one of the most masculine looking Miatas, if you want to say that about a design. But you know what's interesting to me is this all new model is just hitting the market now. It just went on sale last month, and you know what's surprising is this car gets a reputation for being a chick car, but the thing is, the truth of the matter is, most of the people who actually look at this car are men, not women. So those of you who are ashamed, or dare I say too embarrassed to drive a car like this, you really need to take another look, because if you're a true driving enthusiast, the Miata will certainly appeal to you regardless of how small this is. I mean, really, what limits the Miata is how cramped the interior is. If you're somebody who's really tall or very wide, you're not going to fit in the interior very well, as this vehicle is really designed for somebody who's rather average of height and average of weight and like size. Now, looking at the rear profile of the Miata, this is an angle where a lot of people will mistake it for a BMW, a Jaguar F-Type. It looks like a mini F-Type from certain angles, and a lot of BMW and Porsche drivers certainly take a notice of the new Miata. I've had several people in their older Porsche Boxers just give me a thumbs up. This is the kind of car that certainly looks very sleek and exotic looking, and it's still at that price point that most of you can afford. I mean, really, in this class, nothing can really touch this car in terms of dollar or smiles per dollar, in terms of fun for dollar. Now, these 17-inch wheels do come standard on my Grand Touring model. They're the kind of the graphite, darker silver finish. The Club model will give you a different 17-inch alloy wheel finish, which is more of like a dark gray, almost black looking wheel. The Club will still come with 16-inch wheels. Now, 16s are pretty much the new 14-inch wheel for 2015, so the 17s do fill out the wheel wells a lot better. You can see at the rear, these LED taillights come standard. There's only a manual soft top on the Miata right now. There is no power retractable hardtop like there was on the previous generation. Mazda may change that when they update this model, but who knows. Looking at the rear again, the exhaust tips, Mazda decided to go back to a single outlet versus the dual chrome exhaust outlet that was on the previous model. Personally, I think the car looks fine. I think it looks great from the rear, especially from that third rear quarter panel view. And the exhaust note of the 2.2 liter engine is certainly very nice sounding, especially when you have the top down. But for now, let's take a look at the interior and see some of the changes that Mazda has made. Now, stepping inside the cabin of the all-new ND Miata, this is really where Mazda made a lot of significant upgrades. If you guys can remember my previous video on the NC Miata, I criticized it for having a pretty lackluster, cheap interior. Now, you can see my particular GT tester looks almost like a luxury car inside, especially with this black leather with the red contrast stitching. You can see here there are actual 2 speakers integrated in each of the headrests. This is part of the 9-speaker Bose audio system that you get on the Club and the GT models. And you can see the interior ambiance is certainly a lot more premium and very, very European and a lot more interesting. It's full of a lot of basically all the technology that you expect in today's modern cars. Now, being that this is a Miata, it is very low to the ground, so those of you who don't like sitting low, you will not like this car, which is probably another reason why I think this car is more attracted to men. A lot of women, excusing my stereotyping, usually prefer a higher seating position. In this car, every girl that I've put in this car has pretty much complained that it sits too low for their taste. They like sitting up high, that most modern crossovers give you. Now, looking at the interior, the overall look of the interior, again, I'm really impressed with this new interior. You have this leather stitching with the red contrast with soft touch portions here on the dashboard. The upper portion here is hard touch, but it's a very high quality graining. And compared to the last model, the previous generation, this interior is just worlds better. Now, push button start is actually standard on every Miata, including the base model. You get this intelligent access key. Now, if you guys want the actual advanced keyless access system where there's a button on the outside, you have to take out the key out of your pocket or purse. You have to spend about 130 bucks. It's a a la carte option that my tester has. So all you have to do to start it up is put the clutch in and then push the button to start up the engine. And you can hear the engine has a nice snarl when it starts up. This is basically the same 2-liter Skyactiv 4-cylinder that you get in the Mazda 3, surprisingly. And they've done a really good job with tuning it in the Miata. It sounds fantastic, especially when you get out on the road with the top down. We'll show you guys that in the test drive later on. Now you can see that 7-inch display is standard on the Club and the GT models. If you guys go for a Sport, you'll have no more display, but you'll have like a 1/2-inch size radio display, which looks kind of cheap. So I would probably recommend avoiding the Sport model, at least going for the Club. Now looking at the rest of the interior materials here, the Club and the GT models will have these color match portions here. It'll color match the exterior color of the car. My particular tester is the new ceramic metallic exterior. It looks very silverish white. It changes color depending on the light. It's a very beautiful looking color. The leather stitching down here on the armrest is very nice, very comfortable, and I do like this carbon fiber look trim on the steering or the window switches. Now the windows, speaking of which, are only automatic down for both. They are only one touch for down. They're not automatic up or as well, so it's a little disappointing that Mazda didn't just include that. Now, looking at the instrument panel, the gauges gauges are very simple to use. I definitely like this style gauges with the 3 rings versus what Mazda gives you in the 3, for example. You can see your tach is front center, which is what you need in a roadster like this. What's interesting to me here, looking at this display, that is your temperature display, and surprisingly, that is the normal temperature indicator right there. That's basically the engine at normal temperature. It's kind of weird to me how it sits at that angle. It almost looks like the engine is cold. If it starts to move past that, it means the engine is starting to overheat. You can see your fuel gauges down below. You do have a trip computer that's controlled via this little information display here. You can see I've actually been averaging 30.4 miles per gallon in the 1,700 miles of driving that I've been driving this car. Now, I'm looking at the rest of this interior here. One thing that is missing from this car, surprisingly, is when you put the vehicle in reverse, there is no backup camera. I was very surprised about that. I mean, this car is pretty damn small, so all you have to do is just look behind you to see where you're going, but it's a little weird to me that Mazda forgot a backup camera. I wouldn't be surprised to see the company add a backup camera in the coming years. Nevertheless, it's one thing that I wanted to complain about, basically, that I was missing that. Now, you do have some other features such as blind spot monitoring and rear cross traffic alert, so Mazda gives you some backing up aids, but just not a camera. Now, looking at the rest of this interior, obviously I have the 6-speed manual model. It's one of the best shifters ever that I've ever driven. It's a really crisp, short throw. It has a very nice snick feeling through the gates. It basically will challenge the best that you can get from Honda or Porsche. Mazda does a really good job with their shifters. Now, you can see here there are now 2 USB ports in this vehicle, an aux port, and then this right here is your SD card for your navigation, which is interchangeable in case you need to upgrade that. If you guys are looking for a 12-volt power outlet, it's all the way buried down there. That's where Mazda decided to put the 12-volt power outlet, just showing that there's a lack of storage space in this car. Speaking of a lack of storage space, there is no glove box right here. There is a small little storage cubby right there where I've been putting my phone and my cell phone and such. There are your cup holders here, which again are famous for being removable since Mazda didn't want them to get in the way of your shifting. It's a stupid location for the cup holders, I will go ahead and say that. Reaching back here to get a drink or get stuff is really tedious, and it's really difficult to do while you're driving. There is a nice storage compartment down here that acts as the glove box that is lockable, so Mazda did give that to you. This latch right here is for the top. If you pull that latch right there, the top raises up. It's spring loaded, and you can see it's a one-handed operation and really easy to close, and that's basically how you close the top. And to open it, it's just as easy. Just pull on this latch, pull it forward, and then push it over, and then push it down until it clicks, and there you go. It's much simpler and it's much easier to use than any power top, and I love how Mazda kept it simple. Now, looking at the Mazda Connect infotainment system, I've shown you guys this before. It's the same system you're going to get in all the modern Mazda products. You can see it's also a touchscreen if you want to use it as a touchscreen. It's at a good distance, but I prefer to use the Mazda controller as I don't like getting stuff all over the screen. And you can see here are basically all your modern sources. You have your apps, you have your entertainment, you have your communication, navigation, settings. Now, looking at the Nav Display, it is a pretty good Nav Display for the price point. It works very well. The voice commands are somewhat okay. They're not, I don't prefer to use it. I prefer to just use the actual display. But you can see here the map graphics are pretty darn impressive if you ask me. And then going to your audio system here, you do have all your modern typical sources. You have AM, FM, XM, Pandora, Stitcher, Bluetooth audio, and USB. Basically, I mean, everything that you're looking for here that the previous Miata didn't have, Mazda is now included in this new model, which was essential, with making this car a lot more modern. The old one was certainly starting to feel very old, very long in the tooth, and this new one, especially with the interior, elevates it to levels that you never expected. Now, regarding the seats themselves are a newer seat. They're a new seat design. Mazda actually didn't use any metal wiring in the seats. It's just kind of a netting material, and they're very comfortable and they're very supportive. They're also not, the bolsters aren't incredibly wide like on some cars, so if you're of wider stature, you will fit in the car. Just know that this is where I'd have the seat to drive. The passenger seat doesn't really move far back enough. I noticed that some of my friends that were over 6 feet tall had trouble getting comfortable in this seat. There is a little bit more legroom back here. Speaking of the driver's seat, looking at the controls, it does have a adjuster for just this portion here, the thigh portion that goes up and down. It doesn't actually have a seat bottom adjuster, and you can only just recline it. It's all a manual driver's seat. And what Mazda did is when you slide the seat forward and back, it kind of moves up and down automatically, so they assumed that if you're shorter, you kind of wanted to sit up higher, which, you know, looking at the view of the road, you do have to get used to it. It's one of the lowest hoods in the industry, and overall it adds to that feel, that toy-like feel that the Miata has pretty much always given you. Now, being a Miata, This is not a practical car, and the trunk certainly doesn't show that. This car is rated to, it has about 4.8 cubic feet of cargo space, just under 5, which is actually a half a cubic feet less versus the previous model. You can see my camera equipment doesn't actually fit in there. I mean, it fits in there right now, but you can see my slider dolly is actually in the passenger seat because there's not enough space in here for that to fit. There is no spare tire. You can see the well is pretty deep. There is a fix-a-flat kit right here, but there is no temporary spare tire. So those of you who are expecting this car to take it on a weekend trip, you better make sure you pack lightly. Now, under the hood of the all-new ND Miata, you do have an all-new engine. This is the company's 2-liter Skyactiv G double overhead cam 4-cylinder engine. Now, this is the same displacement versus last year's model, but it does have direct injection. That's what Skyactiv means. It has direct injection, a high 13:1 compression ratio, and a special 4:2:1 header. Now, the engine makes actually less power versus the previous model. This makes 155 horsepower now, which is definitely not impressive in terms of numbers on paper, but it does make more torque than last year. It makes 148 pound-feet of torque, which is 8 more pound-feet of torque more, and it is realized at a lower RPM. This car makes 155 horsepower at 6,000 RPM versus 7,000 RPM for the previous model. Now, fuel economy is basically one of the reasons why Skyactiv exists, and the Miata's fuel economy has definitely gone way up versus the previous model. This particular one is rated at 27 in the city, 34 on the highway. Compare that to 21, 28 versus the previous model, and I've been averaging about in the 30 mile per gallon range in the city with my lead foot. So this car gets excellent gas mileage, and it's still pretty powerful. We'll get out on the road and show you guys just how peppy it is to drive. This vehicle is rear-wheel drive only, of course. You can take your pick between the 6-speed manual, which is please the one you should pick. But if you guys want the 6-speed automatic, it's basically the same automatic, the excellent automatic you get in the Mazda 3 and the Mazda 6. So I wouldn't really get mad at you too much. It's still a great transmission. Fuel economy actually does go up if you guys go with the automatic. It's rated at 36 on the highway if you guys go for that transmission. Now, this engine is recommended to use premium fuel, and it does have like an 11-gallon gas tank, so I'd probably say you should put premium fuel in it. I certainly have. It deserves that fuel, especially for the high compression ratio. And the one thing that the GT model is missing versus the Club is the limited slip differential and the Bilstein shocks and the strut tower brace. So the Club model is the one to get if you guys plan to track this car. But let's get on the road and see just how this GT model drives in terms of the differences. So unfortunately, the weather kind of sucks right now, but because we're in a Miata, I'm going to drive with the top down anyways for the test drive portion. So let's go. Now, first setting off in the all-new ND Miata, I can definitely say that the Miata personality, that lightweight toy-like feel, is definitely still there, and with a weight reduction of at least 150 pounds, you're gonna basically have a big smile on your face every time you get behind the wheel of this car. Now, when Mazda first introduced this car last year, chief designer of the Miata said that his main goal for this car was to put a smile on the driver's face in the first 30 seconds of driving this car. And I have to say, that goal was definitely achieved. I pretty much had a big smile on my face the moment I sat in this car, just the overall feel. And you really need to get behind the wheel of a Miata in general to understand just how much fun this car still is. Now, the Miata has never really been a numbers car. This car's not about straight line performance. It's about handling. It's about just the overall driving feel when you're behind the wheel. It makes you smile. It makes you just want to have fun. And this is what the car's main mission is. But, you know, if you guys are wondering what this car will accelerate to 60 in, it definitely feels like a low 6-second car. I've seen it as quick as 5.8 from Motor Trend, but it really just depends on the driver. You have to be focused. You have to get the launch right to get this car to be the fastest in a straight line. And at 5.8 seconds, this new car is the quickest production Miata Mazda has ever built. But of course, straight line acceleration isn't the point of this car. The point of this car is corners, is handling. And when you take the Miata on your favorite back road, this is one fun car. It's a car that you'd be perfectly content at driving at slow speeds, at fast speeds, and the Miata can basically handle all of it. The steering on this car is a new electric power steering assist. It's new for 2016, and that's what I'm going to focus on really quick, because a lot of people have criticized it for not being as good as the old hydraulic setup, and I have to say that is definitely the case. An electric power steering system will never be as good as a hydraulic setup. However, as far as electric power steering systems, this is one of the best in the business, and the precision is there. It starts out very light at low speeds, which is basically what you need just to make the car smoother, easier to drive. But when you get up to higher speeds like this, the steering weighs up very nicely, and you can see the car is still incredibly playful. It still changes directions with authority, so you're going to be having a blast behind the wheel. And one thing you will feel is that trademark Miata body roll. Now, of course, I've got the GT model. If you guys go for the club with the special Bilstein shocks, the limited slip diff, it will feel a little bit more firm, but nevertheless, the GT model is a little bit softer, but it's not soft, it's not pillowy soft like a Camry. This still feels fun. It soaks up the bumps very well. So if you guys are used to driving on crappy pavement like what I'm driving on in the DC area here, this will offer a nice balance between a comfortable ride and a solid, secure handling. Now, one thing that the GT model gives you that the other models don't is some driver assistance tech. Now, this is a very small car. I mean, with the top down, you can basically see everything around you, but you still have features like blind spot monitoring, rear cross traffic alert, rain sensing wipers, lane departure warning. It's a new technology feature for the Miata, and it's nice that Mazda decided to include that. And the shifter is another excellent tool in the Miata. It's one of the best shifters in the business. This is way better than the BRZ shifter that I showed you guys my last review. And the engine in this car is also interesting. It's the same 2-liter Skyactiv direct injection 4-cylinder that comes out of the Mazda 3. However, in this car, Mazda's tuned it differently. It's got a different exhaust, a different intake manifold tuning. It's got a different tune in general, and it makes the car feel much different. It also sounds pretty damn good. I'm surprised with just how well the exhaust sounds. This is a factory exhaust system, and it's got a very broad torque curve. You don't really need to rev the engine out to feel the power like you do in the BRZ. You know, with the top down like this, with the windows up, the buffeting in here is also pretty darn good. Mazda's done a good job with controlling the noise. Now, this is still a convertible roadster. The Miata's never been known for being a quiet car, so getting out on the highway, it's going to be a little bit loud. But again, to forget about how loud this car is, to forget about that, you just put the top down, feel the wind in your hair, let the sun shine if the sun was out right now, and basically you forget about the noise levels that a roadster might give you. So coming to the conclusion of my review, let's talk about a couple of numbers here. Now, fuel efficiency is all part of the Skyactiv name, and the new Miata gets very good gas mileage, actually. This new one's rated at 27 in the city, 34 on the highway, and I was definitely able to beat those EPA numbers. Now, I had an NC last year that I showed you guys for a week, and the fuel economy on that one was about 22 miles to the gallon. In mostly city driving. On the highway, I did eke it up to about 30. Now that is not very impressive for a small lightweight roadster like this. Now this new one is very impressive in terms of fuel economy. I actually averaged 30 miles to the gallon in just city driving. And keep in mind, I've had this car for a little over a month and a half. It's got about 2,000 miles on it now. And to get 30 miles to the gallon in the city is just incredible. And on the highway, when I took this car on a longer highway trip, I actually was able to get 36 miles to the gallon. So again, those numbers are basically what you're going to get in a compact, even a mid-sized car nowadays on the highway. But the fact that Mazda's improved the efficiency by that much just shows just how committed this company is to improving fuel economy, but keeping the fun levels in this car. This car is still a blast to drive when you get it out on a curvy back road. Now, regarding the price of the Miata, you might expect this car's price to increase now that you've had all this technology. You've got the newest model, you have better gas mileage, and you'd be right. The starting price of the Sport model starts at just under $25,000, which is still right in line with what you're going to find from a Subaru BRZ, a Scion FRS. That's basically what the main competitors are for the Miata. I mean, you could compare this car to a Mini Cooper convertible, but the Mini is front-wheel drive. It's going to have a completely different personality versus the Miata. And really, for a lot of you, if you're looking for a two-seat roadster like this car is really in a class of its own. If you wanted to find something that directly compares to it, the Porsche Boxster would be that car. But again, it's twice the price of the Miata, and that's one of the reasons why Mazda's Miata is the best-selling roadster in the world. Now, my particular tester, or the one that I bought, is the GT model. This one is the top-of-the-line model, per se. You can spec up a club model, the mid-level club, to be more expensive. If you guys go for the club with the Brembo brake package, it's going to be just over $32,000. My particular GT was about $31,000 fully delivered, and there are not really any options on the car except for the remote keyless intelligent access that my car has, and then there's a new underbody kit that you can get on the GT, on the club, that's available on the GT as well for about $1,200. All in, I mean, for $31,000, you'd be hard pressed to find another car that competes with this car that offers the same level of fun, the same level of enjoyment. And really, the Miata is still in a class of its own. The BRZ that I showed you guys was also around $30,000, but again, that is a coupe. It's got a slightly different feel, a really different feel actually. So if you guys are in the market for a roadster, a toy like this, if you have room in your garage, the Miata is definitely worth a look. And if you guys decide not to take a look at one just because of the stigma that's attached to a Miata, you're really doing yourself a disservice. Anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed my overview of this all-new 2016 ND Miata. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you're looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, make sure you follow me on Instagram, like us on Facebook, and keep subscribed to the YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thanks so much for watching, guys. I'll catch you all in the next video.